Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope your day and your week are going very well so far. Got a new day, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day comes a new opportunity to go ahead and make some money. I have a lot, and I mean a lot of NBA picks to go ahead and share with you guys. In today's slate, we have a bunch of single straight bet picks. We also have a nice little three-leg parlay to close out today's video with the start of the NBA Cup. Today officially starts the group stage for this year's edition of the NBA Cup. It was really fun last year, honestly. It was a fun way to make the regular season a little more exciting. Really looking forward to it again this year to see if they made any improvements on it. But mainly, I'm really excited to go ahead and bet on today's slate. I got a lot of games going on in today's NBA slate. I do want to apologize for my voice. I'm not sick. I know I always get sick. I'm not sick, though. Just had a long weekend. Was in Chicago. If you missed my last video, the reason why we haven't had a video since Thursday was in Chicago and / Indiana. Really fun weekend. Went to Notre Dame, Florida State. Went to Bears, Patriots. Went to Blackhawks, Wild. It was a really fun weekend. A lot of celebrating, a lot of cheering. My throat is still a little hoarse from all the yelling and screaming and cheering in those games. So it was a really fun weekend. I met Jerome Bettis. I met Shrewsbury, head coach for Notre Dame. I met Mubi from Barstool Sports. Like, was a wild, absolutely wild. One of the best weekends of my life for sure. But we're back today. A lot of NBA picks and absolutely no time to waste. So, guys, let's jump right into today's picks. All right, guys, jumping right into the outlier screen. Our first pick in today's slate. This is a straight bet. Again, I'll make sure to signify when we move on to the parlay portion of today's video. Our first straight bet of today's video, we're targeting the Hawks-Celtics game, 7 p.m. tip-off. We're going Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics over 34.5 points plus assists. And the data on this one across the board is really, really solid. Jason Tatum, overall this year, a 64% hit rate on this over. 7 out of 11 games this year has cashed the over, averaging 35.55 points plus assists per game. Jason Tatum is on a mission this season, and right now I think he's probably one of the front runners for the MVP award. He's been fantastic this year, and he's got a really solid matchup against a Hawks team that defensively is a little bit of a mess. The head-to-head data, you see 4 of his last 5 meetings against the Atlanta Hawks, he has cashed the over, averaging 36.2 points plus assists per game. They have met already one time this year, back on November 4th, just about a week ago, and he had 28 points and 9 assists in that matchup. So he's already cashed it once this year. Look at the right side of the screen. Atlanta, 28th in points allowed this year, 121.6 points per game this season given up to opposing teams, 18 assists allowed per game. And Tatum kind of fluctuates between small forward and power forward for the Celtics versus small forwards. Atlanta, 29th in points allowed, 24th in assists allowed versus power forwards. Although they are better, it's still not great numbers. 15th in points allowed and 18th in assists allowed. NBA Cup game, these games obviously mean a little bit more. So I do think Tatum is having a great season in general. I think he's going to keep the good times rolling here. We're going to go ahead and take this over 34.5 points plus assists for 1 unit. All right, guys, next up, we're targeting the Hornets Magic game, 7 p.m. tip-off. We're going Brandon Miller of the Charlotte Hornets over 7.5 rebounds plus assists. Pretty good value on this one, minus 115 on FanDuel and DraftKings, so pretty decent value and pretty good data. Miller's cashed the over in 4 out of 6 games this year for the Charlotte Hornets, a 67% hit rate, averaging 7.67 rebounds plus assists per game. Pretty solid numbers, and the head-to-head data really solid as well. Each of his last 3 meetings against the Orlando Magic, he has cashed the over, averaging 7.5 rebounds plus assists per game. The last time he failed to cash this was of November of last year, literally about a year ago. He had 5 rebounds and 1 assist in that game. Brandon Miller really starting to come into his own for the Charlotte Hornets. The data looks pretty solid, and the matchup's pretty solid as well. Orlando this year versus small forwards, 25th in rebounds allowed and 27th in assists allowed. So really good matchup here. He's been cashing in a 67% hit rate so far this year, and a 75% hit rate against the Orlando Magic. Really solid prop and really solid value. All right, guys, we are absolutely cruising here. Our third pick in today's slate, we're targeting the Miami Heat Detroit Pistons game, 7 p.m. tip-off. We're going Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat over 18.5 points. Again, pretty solid value on this one as well. Minus 115 on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Now, the data for this one at first glance does not look great. Just a 22% hit rate so far this year for Adebayo, 14.78 points per game average this year. Not great, but I'm going to tell you guys it gets a lot better. The head-to-head data is pretty solid. You see 3 of his last 5 meetings against the Pistons, he has cashed the over with a 60% hit rate, averaging 18.8 points per game against the Pistons. They have played this year already. He only had 12 points in that game against Detroit. But the key reason as to why I love this prop, guys, is the fact that Jimmy Butler is out tonight for the Miami Heat. And the data when Jimmy Butler is out gets a lot better. Now, so far this year, he's only played one game without Butler. He only had 9 points in that game. However, that is the Minnesota Timberwolves, a really tough matchup there defensively. But overall, look at last year. 27 games he played without Jimmy Butler last year. He cashed this over in 21 out of those 27 games. It's a 78% hit rate. So really good numbers there. When Jimmy Butler's out, Bam Adebayo takes a lot more shots. His usage rate goes up. He becomes the primary guy on this Miami Heat team. And the head-to-head data, the one time he placed off with Detroit last year without Jimmy Butler, he had 20 points and cashed the over in that game. So far this year, Detroit, not bad, but they're on the bottom half of the league. 19th defensively versus centers, giving up 19.7 points per game to opposing centers so far this season. So not a great matchup necessarily, but not a bad one either. And again, without Jimmy Butler, the data looks pretty solid. So we'll go ahead and rock with this over 18.5 points, 1 unit for Bam Adebayo. All right, guys, our fourth pick in today's slate, we have Knicks Sixers, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. We have Mikal Bridges of the New York Knicks over 16.5 points plus assists. We're getting this from -125 on DraftKings. Also available Bet365 underdog for -120 if you guys have those sports books available to you. And the data, again, for all these props you're seeing, the data is pretty solid. So far this year, Bridges has cashed the over in 6 out of 9 games. It's a 67% hit rate, averaging 18.78 points plus assists per game. The last couple games, you see a couple of misses there, but overall the data looks pretty solid for Mikal Bridges. And the head-to-head data is pretty solid as well. 3 of his last 4 meetings against the Sixers is all, of course, being last year as a member of the Brooklyn Nets. He cashed the over, averaging 19 points plus assists per game against the Sixers last year. Is a 75% hit rate. So overall, pretty solid data. 75% hit rate head-to-head, 67% hit rate overall this year, 6 out of 9 games. And overall, the matchup versus the Sixers, you see they're 19th in points allowed, 22nd in assists allowed, bottom half of the league in both those categories. Versus small forwards, they're 15th in points allowed and 12th in assists allowed. Again, not bad numbers, so not great for us, but they're about middle of the road. So overall, it's a pretty decent matchup. He's cashing at a pretty high rate so far this year. I like the spot for Mikal Bridges here against the Sixers. All right, guys, next up, we're targeting Warriors, Mavericks, 10 p.m. tip-off. And look, I know it's a square pick. Absolutely, it's a square pick, but I'm going to go ahead and rock with it. We're going Klay Thompson here over 15.5 points in this matchup. It's -115 on DraftKings, available on pretty much every sportsbook. It's the Klay Thompson revenge games. It's his first time returning against the Warriors in Oracle Arena. Or I guess it's not Oracle anymore, but, first time returning to Golden State against his former team. You know he's going to be motivated in this game. The Warriors basically gave up on him, let him leave after all those years, and I think it was the right decision for both parties. I think Klay Thompson was due for a change of scenery. The Warriors were ready for a kind of a split from Klay Thompson, but overall, he's going to be extra motivated in this matchup. And data so far this year is not great. He's cashed this over in 4 out of 10 games this year, a 40% hit rate, averaging 13.8 points per game this season. I mean, the volume's there, the usage rate's there. He's averaging about 30 minutes per game so far this year. He's taking about 8 threes per game, 12.2 shots per game. So the volume's there. He's just not shooting the best. 42% overall from the floor, 35% from 3, which is not bad necessarily, but he's been having a rough couple games. You see 1 for 7 from 3, 1 for 6 from 3. So a little bit of a rough stretch there for Klay Thompson. But again, that extra motivation factor. The Warriors here defensively have not been great versus shooting guards. 22nd versus shooting guards, 26th versus small forwards, which is where Klay Thompson kind of fluctuates between. So overall, it's a pretty solid defensive matchup. The Warriors are actually top 10 defense overall, but versus those two positions, they're relatively weak against. I just think Klay Thompson's going to get a ton of opportunities. The Mavericks are going to give him his chances to take those shots. I think he's going to be extra motivated. Games like these are the games where Klay Thompson steps up and rises to the occasion. I think the Mavericks know how much this game means to him. He's going to take a shit ton of shots in this game. I think he's going to go ahead and cash this over for -115 odds too. Pretty good value. So give me Klay Thompson over 15.5 points. I know it's a bit of a square pick. I know probably everybody and their mother's going to be betting this over, but I do think it's a really solid spot. All right, guys, and our 6th and final straight pick before we move on to the parlays is in the Timberwolves Trailblazers game, 10 p.m. tip-off. We're going to Mikal Alexander-Walker of the Minnesota Timberwolves over 9.5 points plus assists. Again, from -110 on DraftKings. Again, available on multiple sports books for varying odds. And really solid data here. 7 out of 10 games so far this year, Alexander-Walker has cashed the over, averaging 11.1 points plus assists per game this year for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Really good numbers for him. The head-to-head data also really solid. You see 3 of his last 5 meetings against the Blazers cashed the over, averaging 10.8 points plus assists per game. Those numbers are brought down by a couple of really low-scoring games there. But one time they played this year, back on November 8th, just a few days ago, Alexander Walker had 9 points and 3 assists in what was a 127-102 win for the Timberwolves. He's been pretty good for them this year. He's really been stepping up. Jaden McDaniels kind of having a rough start to the year, and he's kind of filled in and played very well. You look at the volume, about 23 minutes per game, but you do see over the last 10 games or so, those numbers are increasing. He's playing a lot of good games there, getting a lot more opportunities. In the matchup versus small forwards, Portland, 14th in points allowed, 29th in assists allowed. So really good matchup here for Mikal Alexander-Walker. He also plays shooting guard too, which they're 30th and 30th overall in those spots. So he kind of fluctuates between those two spots. Primarily plays more the 3, but also can play the 2. But overall, Portland 22nd in points allowed, 28th in assists allowed so far this year. So really good matchup here for Mikal Alexander-Walker. All right, guys, so those are all of our straight picks for today's video. The rest of the picks, I have a 3-leg parlay here. These are all part of the parlay. They're all alternate lines. If you want to go ahead and take them and throw them in your own parlay, you can do what you want, but this is the parlay that we are betting for this video. It's plus 216 odds right now on DraftKings. Our first leg, we're going Jason Tatum over 24.5 points. 91% hit rate so far this year, averaging 30.55 points per game this year. Really good numbers for Tatum. The head-to-head data, 80% hit rate, 4 of his last 5 games against Atlanta. He's cashed the over, including the one time they played this year. He had 28 points. We talked about already, Atlanta's defense not very good. I think Tatum in the NBA Cup game is going to really ball out. 25 points. Easy money for him. We'll go ahead and take that over. And for our second leg, we're going with another pick that we had already given earlier in the video, just taking a couple points off of it. We're going Mikal Bridges of the New York Knicks over 14.5 points plus assists. Again, we took it at 16.5 in our straight bets. Now we're shopping about 2 points plus assists off. It's an alternate line, but the numbers do increase. 89% hit rate so far this year for Mikal Bridges. 8 out of 9 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 18.78 points plus assists per game. The head-to-head data, a little bit better. 3 of his last 4 meetings against the Sixers cashed the over. So the numbers all basically remain the same. Again, we already talked about the matchup. So that's our second leg of our parlay. And for our third and final leg of this parlay, guys, again, plus 216 odds on DraftKings. You can go and look over here. Plus 213, a little bit of a drop, but plus 213, plus 216, those odds will probably fluctuate throughout the day. We have Dante DiVincenzo of the Minnesota Timberwolves over 15.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. This is the most juiced, I guess next to the Tatum prop, the most juiced odds in the parlays. Cashed is over in 8 out of 10 games this year, including 7 consecutive games he's cashed the over. And the head-to-head data, 100% hit rate all 3 times facing off with Portland. That includes both matchups last year with the Knicks and the one meeting this year with Minnesota. As a member of the Timberwolves, he's cashed the over, averaging 21 points plus rebounds plus assists per game against Portland. And again, they are bottom 10 in all 3 of those categories. And versus shooting guards, they're the worst ranked team in the NBA in all 3 categories. So really good matchup. And DiVincenzo, I mean, the volume's been there. He's playing a ton of minutes, about 27 minutes per game this year for Minnesota. So the volume's there. He's playing a ton of minutes. As long as he sticks with that volume, he should go ahead and cash this over. So, guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. A lot of picks today, 6 straight bets and a 3-leg parlay. A lot of value and a lot of volume in today's video. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video. But until then, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy the first night of the NBA Cup.